Welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We've got everything covered for you this morning. God, it's like a perfect bagel. It's just got to have it, got to need it, you want more. So, Caroline Fenton, let's get right into the NBA action from last night because we got a shocker. We've got puckered up fans in the Lakers right now. Everybody's trying to figure out what to make of it. The Rockets take down the Lakers. LeBron loses his first home playoff loss in a game where they could have clinched since 2008. How panicked should Lakers fans be?
I think they should be at least a little bit panicked. Like, I understand that Lakers are up 3-2, and it could feel like a long shot for the Rockets to win 2 consecutive games, but I'm not really totally buying into that. Like, I do think, well, we're not pressing the panic button. If I'm a Laker fan, my hand is hovering over the panic button. And here's why. The Lakers had an extra day of rest after, look, in game 4, that was kind of one that I was like, okay, look, the Lakers won the first 3 games. LeBron is gassed. He looked like it. We knew the Rockets could probably find at least a little bit of something to make this series interesting. I didn't feel like the Lakers were going to sweep the Rockets. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. Rockets find a way to win game 4. But they were going to come back home on an extra day of rest, getting Austin Reeves back. KD was going to be out. I thought there's no way the Rockets are going to find a way to win this game when everything is going in the Lakers' favor. But the Lakers, with everything on their side, home court, extra day of rest, Austin Reeves is back, they looked so lackluster. They didn't come out with the thunder of the fire of the gods that I thought the Lakers should have. They didn't come out like, let's close this thing up. Like, let's get a couple more days rest. Let's just go ahead and close this thing out, and then we'll rest up before we face on the big bad Oklahoma City Thunder. That's what I thought they should look like. I think that's what we all expected the Lakers to look like. Like, all right, that was cute. You won game 4. Now, like, let's let the big dogs get down to business. They just looked so discombobulated. LeBron even said it after the game. We made too many dumb mistakes, and they did. They made too many dumb mistakes. They just looked so tired. And I get it. 41-year-old LeBron James is going to look more tired in a game 5 or a game 6 than he would in a game 1 or a game 2. But you get Austin Reeves back, and I get it. I know he's probably ramping up a little bit. We expected a ramping up period. But even with a ramping up period for Austin Reeves, and even with a 41-year-old LeBron James looking like he could use a couple more days rest, I expected the Lakers to look much more passionate than they did last night. And so you might say the Rockets can't win 2 more games without KD and with Austin Reeves back. Well, they just did. They just did win 2 games without KD. And frankly, Fitz, I think they look better without him.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of this. Look, they become the youngest starting 5, the Rockets do without KD, to win a road playoff game. So think about that. That's the youngest starting 5. That according to Stats and Info at ESPN today. So you think about the youth and the spark that gives the Rockets. That's something. But also, there's been a huge shift here. This is why we can't make sweeping generalizations on teams and coaches until we see the whole series play out. Because a couple of days ago, we were talking about J.J. Redick and how he was just coaching circles around Ime Udoka. But the fact is, as pointed out this morning by Brian Windhorst, I want to give him credit here, the Rockets have made a massive change in their strategy. This is one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the NBA. They had 6 offensive rebounds last night. You watch the box score, you'd say, well, man, they got beat on the glass. No, they've made a conscious decision to start backing off because the only way right now the Lakers know how to generate any offense is in transition. So what the Rockets are doing is essentially they're sending everybody back right away to limit transition opportunities for the Lakers, and the Lakers offense looks lost. So you're right, Caroline. Part of this is a team that just looks like it doesn't have that same spark, but part of it is because everything's a little bit more difficult in front of them. You can't just rely on running out and getting transition points, and you're relying more and more on a 41-year-old LeBron to be absolute he-man. The fact is, too, over the last couple of games, Kennard and Smart have basically been a non-burger compared to the rest of what we saw throughout the course of this series. So am I concerned? Yeah, I'm a little concerned, but also I look across the board and think, okay, for everything that went wrong for the Lakers last night, they were in this thing. LeBron's tired legs couldn't get a 3 to hit late, not faulting LeBron at all. But to me, I still look at this and say this thing came down to a bucket. late in the game when essentially not much was going great for the Lakers and they weren't getting the contributions they expected other than LeBron and DeAndre Ayton, who were spectacular. I think we're going to see a little bit. Austin Reeves is going to break some of that rust off. He's going to be better in the next game. It's a quick turnaround. So I'm not panicked yet for the Lakers, but we're awful darn close. Now, one breaking news, piece of news we got this morning from Shams is that KD will not be playing in Game 6. I'm not surprised by that, Caroline, but also to go back to something that you just said, I'm also not sure that right now the Rockets aren't playing better without KD. The young guys are playing with the level of freedom and movement that seems to be working. So maybe this isn't the net negative that we thought it was going to be. Not saying that the Rockets are better as a team without KD, but right now it seems like things are flowing pretty well. So maybe I'm not panicking the same way.
Well, I think that both things can be true. That the Rockets would not be in this position without Kevin Durant. I mean, Kevin Durant played 78 games this season. He was incredibly consistent. He was available, which at 37 years old, I think is impressive in and of itself. So I don't think that the Rockets would be in this position in the postseason without Kevin Durant in the regular season. But I also don't think it's a coincidence that the 2 games in which the Rockets have won this series have been without Kevin Durant. Because I think that there's a certain level of toxicity in this locker room that has just started to bubble over in the postseason. Everything is different. All bets are off in the postseason. Tensions are higher. And it clearly feels like the tensions between Kevin Durant and the rest of this team have bubbled over in the postseason. We heard it from Alperen Şengün. He called this team his team. And the rest of the team kind of doubled down on it and was like, yep, like we will rally behind him. It has been so clear from what this team has said to the media. I think they kind of hate KD. It feels like it's the case, and we also have some historical context that gives credence to the fact that Kevin Durant is not a good leader. We saw it in Brooklyn. We saw it in Phoenix. There's a reason why there's this quote-unquote KD curse that's been following him for a majority of his career, with the exception of Golden State. I mean, we've heard all of these reports of KD tweeting about his teammates from a burner and, texting in group messages about his teammates, knowing that those messages would get out and get back to his teammates. There's bad vibes. It feels like it's Houston Rockets against KD. And I do think that there's kind of a galvanizing factor to that. Look, he's out. We don't have to worry about him anymore. We don't have to walk on eggshells around Kevin Durant anymore. We don't have to allow this toxic culture to persist anymore. I mean, when they were talking about it, we don't even know what KD's been up to, hasn't been rehabbing in the building. We haven't been talking to him. That's weird. That I think is very strange that a healthy team with a good team camaraderie doesn't have. So while I'm not going to get up here and say the Houston Rockets are a significantly better team without Kevin Durant, because I don't think that this core can all of a sudden give Oklahoma City a run for its money, I do think that the culture within the locker room is healthier without Kevin Durant. And I think that you would be naive to think that that isn't fueling this team and hasn't been fueling this team the past couple of games. I mean, the Rockets have looked like the better team the last 2 games. It hasn't just been about the Lakers, albeit I do think mistakes from the Lakers, LeBron 10 points, 8 rebounds in Game 4, that definitely helps the Rockets' case. It's not just about the Rockets. Of course, it is about some mistakes that the Lakers have made, but the Houston Rockets have been and looked like the better team over the last 2 games.
Well, certainly, because, the other part of this is, when we were talking to Wendy a few days ago on the show, and he mentioned, KD's still great offensively, maybe not the best defensively. Well, the big difference right now to me is that the Lakers offense hasn't been able to get on track. I have to credit the Rockets defense for part of that. You got young guys on the court in a playoff game, fresh legs. There's just a lot there to like for Houston. Now, the other side of this, I can't say this loud enough, Caroline, is we talk about LeBron all the time. And I realize everybody has to have a LeBron opinion. But if the Lakers turn around and lose this series and people decide they want to put that squarely at the feet of LeBron, if people right now want to talk about LeBron being the problem or LeBron lost last night, if that's your answer, if your answer is to turn around and pin this on LeBron, I can't help you. If you're at such a weird triggered spot with LeBron where you got to turn around and make the success or failure of the Lakers in this just about him, I can't help you. But particularly in a series where 41-year-old LeBron has played 38, 39, 45, 33, and 39 minutes. Like, we're not just talking about LeBron as giving some minutes. We're talking about the Lakers basically turned around in this series and said, well, we got nothing. LeBron, right? So if you turn around and say, oh my God, I can't believe LeBron choked a series where he was up 3-0. Like, this is what just absolutely enrages me about the way that we cover the NBA. We make everything about one guy. LeBron is going to be absolutely the scapegoat for this entire thing. We could see it coming already. And there's going to be some moron that sits on TV and says, how could LeBron let this sort of a lead slip away? And I can't do that. Like, you're asking somebody 41 to turn around and play like LeBron when he was 25. Caroline, I can't find the level in that. If this series becomes, if a loss in this series becomes yet another sort of check in the LeBron hasn't done enough legacy conversation, then we've completely lost the plot of this whole thing.
You say we can't ask a 41-year-old to play like he's 25. He has. He has been playing like he's 25. 19 points in game 1, 28 in game 2, 29 in game 3. Now, I did mention the game 4, not LeBron's best performance, but bounces back with the 25.9. The Lakers wouldn't be in this series if it wasn't for LeBron. It's so easy. It's like in football. The quarterback gets all the glory and all of the blame. When you win, the quarterback's great. When you lose, the quarterback sucks. That's not what this is with LeBron. This series would be over by now if LeBron wasn't playing the level that he was playing over the last 5 games. So if you want to say, if the Lakers lose this series, or this series has all of a sudden gotten much more uncomfortable for Lakers fans than we initially anticipated after they went up 3-0, and you want to put that squarely at the feet of LeBron James, I cannot help you. I do not know what to tell you. Like, open your eyeballs, watch the game. Don't just, it's an easy and convenient excuse to put it at the best player that we have ever seen play in the history of the game of basketball, or one of the best. I'm not having this debate today. It's easy and convenient to do that, but it is totally and completely wrong and off base. You want to say the Lakers lost last night after LeBron shot 45% from the field and put up 25 points and 7 assists? I would look at Marcus Smart, who turned the ball over 6 times. Like, let's give blame where blame is due. And I will give credit where credit is due. Because the Lakers are where they are. We're up 3-0 in this series because of LeBron James. I'm not doing that. Let's blame LeBron. I will blame LeBron when I feel like blame is fair to place at the feet of LeBron James. But this series has been about LeBron James in the most positive way possible.
While we're giving out credit, let's give credit in some of the other results we saw last night in the NBA, including Cade Cunningham going off. Cade drops to 45 in an absolute dominant performance for him, where 2 number 1 overall picks win at it. Paolo Banchero also with 45 points. The Pistons take down the Magic 116-109. They trimmed it to 3-2. Is this can Cade keep doing this, Caroline?
Of course he can. Of course Cade Cunningham can keep doing this. He's been doing this all season long. There's a reason why Cade Cunningham was an MVP candidate for a majority of the season. Yeah, I mean, is Cade Cunningham going to put up 45 points every single night? Probably not. But I think that Cade Cunningham can continue to, because we have seen it really all season long, can continue to carry this team. The question that I have is, even in a 6-point night, it doesn't necessarily pop off the box score, but can we continue to see the contributions from Ausar Thompson that we saw last night? 15 rebounds and 6 assists. Can we continue to see the Jalen Duren that we saw last night versus the Jalen Duren that we saw at the beginning of this series? You can count on Cade Cunningham. It's never been the question. The question with Detroit has been, does Detroit have enough around Cade Cunningham? And the biggest thing to me, Fitz, is can we see a level of pissed off from this Pistons team for not just the rest of this series, but if they advance for the rest of the postseason that we saw last night? That edge that maybe we haven't seen against the Orlando Magic that made this Pistons team so incredibly special. That's what I want to see. Cade is never the question for me. It's everyone else around Cade.
Yeah, 45-point games when you're staving off elimination are the sorts of things that change the way the league talks about you forever. And I'm not surprised to see Cade or frankly, Paulo doing it. All right, what about the other result we got last night? Didn't always look pretty, but the Cavs get a big win over the Raptors, 125-120. A huge fourth quarter for Cleveland that at times felt lost in this game, but when they needed buckets, their stars came through and got buckets. Cleveland takes the 3-2 series win. How are we feeling about the Cavs?
James Harden has been, we look back when that move was made, when the Cavs acquired James Harden. We all looked around. We were all sitting at the Super Bowl together. We were talking about how this was going to be a massive move for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I loved it. You loved it. My Goldfarb, our producer, diehard Cleveland Cavaliers fan, he loved it. And it just continues to pay dividends. Because I understand and acknowledge that Donovan Mitchell is going to be the focal point of this organization. But last night, what I saw was James Harden was the focal point on the floor, moving the ball, creating offense, creating shots. I mean, a huge win for Cleveland. I think that although Brandon Ingram for the Raptors hasn't been incredibly consistent, losing Brandon Ingram in that second half, I think, obviously showed for the Raptors. It felt like their offense went a little stagnant at times without Brandon Ingram out there on the court. But I mean, James Harden has looked like to me to be the ultimate difference for this Cleveland team.
Yeah, when you've got guys like Harden and Donovan Mitchell and Dennis Schroeder all coming in and contributing last night, it's a reminder that you have Evan Mobley too. Got to give him credit. The Cavs just have more guys than the Raptors do. When it comes down to it, fourth quarter, and you're saying, oh, my God, who can get us a bucket? The Cavs have a lot more options on that roster than Toronto does. I'm not surprised they won that. I still think they win this series. But, my God, it has been an electric back and forth that last night had Cleveland fans feeling some kind of way throughout the course of the game. Big fourth quarter, though. So we've got plenty more NBA action to break down for you over the course of the show. We will do that. But coming up next, a massive lawsuit against the NCAA from that man. Current NFL star Jameson Williams suing the NCAA in a way that could change college sports forever.
Another matchup between the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. How are these teams going to guard each other?
If you're Denver, you're going to have to find a comfort throwing different coverages at Minnesota and Anthony Edwards. It can't just be one thing. The same goes for Nikola Jokic, where honestly, whatever you do, I'm eventually going to get to a point where you do not feel comfortable with how you are guarding me, no matter who's on me.
Handoff, Thomas busting it through for the end zone, touchdown! Tavion Thomas and Tucson back in front with 16 seconds left. 1 second, final play of the game. Jerome Johnson looking into the end zone. Johnson, far corner, jump ball, knocked into the crowd. Game over, Tucson wins.
Playing basketball with your back to the basket and not able to see the floor in the same way was a whole lot different for LeBron. And so that's why it took a little bit for him to feel comfortable in that back to the basket positioning. He's got more post-ups this postseason than Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, and Alperen Şengün combined. This is a huge story, and what a wrinkle that LeBron James has thrown into this series.
When you guys talk about your relationship and your friendship and your respect, there are some people who think like, well, do they want to kill each other? Do they want to fight each other? Do they want to hurt each other? You have to do that when you fight someone.
Yeah. If you have like females sparring in the gym, like it's really hard to not to go heavy. Like women just like, they cut that, emotional thing off and they just like, it's me or you. And Rhonda has that, I have that.
Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams is suing the NCAA, the Big Ten, and the SEC over allegations they've been using his name, image, and likeness without properly compensating him for it, per the New York Post. Caroline, this is one of those moments that a player is suing college sports in a way that could absolutely open the floodgates for so many other people, because this isn't just about him. It's about the precedent, something we talk a lot with lawsuits that could be happening here, as he turns around and sues the NCAA, claiming essentially that he has received, the quote is, the plaintiff has received less, 0, than he otherwise would have received for the uses of name, image and likeness in a competitive market and was thus damaged and seeks to recover those damages. He is accusing them of violating the Cartwright Act, the violation of Unfair Practices Act, and the violation of the Sherman Antitrust, violation of the Lanham Act. All of these different things that basically say that every time his face is on a TV or broadcast or any way, shape, or form, he deserves some money from it.
This is wild. And it's fascinating to me that it's coming from Jameson Williams, somebody who was grandfathered into the NCAA back pay. Remember, when NIL was first agreed to, the NCAA agreed to pay, $2.5 billion in back pay to any athlete that was playing an NCAA sanctioned sport back to 2016. So Jameson Williams did get to cash in on the back pay. And also, Jameson Williams was playing in college sports when NIL was legal. So Jameson Williams did, at least at the back end of his college career, get to cash in on NIL. So it's fascinating to me that it's a player that has actually gotten paid based off of name, image, and likeness. But this can change everything, Fitzy. If he does win. Now, look, suing the NCAA and the SEC and the Big Ten is one thing. You can sue anybody for anything. The question is, can you win? If he does win, this all of a sudden doesn't just change college sports forever. In my opinion, this changes media forever. Because all of a sudden, anybody whose face is used in anything is liable to compensation. So I'll use, for example, those like school commercials that always play during college football games? Like, oh, you're leaders and researchers and leaders in innovation come to the University of Missouri. I was in one of those commercials for LSU. It was like a clip of me doing student media. All of a sudden, do I get compensated for that? Because you used a video of me in a commercial that creates revenue. So all of a sudden, can I say that I am eligible in a certain cut of every single person and every single student who paid tuition at LSU after that commercial was played? Like, why not? Because this would show precedent. All of a sudden, is a fan that's in the background of a clip that's being played on Ohio State football's social media, a fan reaction, all of a sudden, can you cash in on that because you used my name, image, and likeness, used my face in a video? Like, that's what this would be. So for that reason, I don't think that he can actually win this lawsuit. First of all, because I think that Alabama and Ohio State have those protections in place, whether it's signing a contract or, there are lawyers protecting themselves from anything like this. But also because I don't think that using a highlight on social media is the same thing as name, image, and likeness. It's not the same thing as, let's say, local grocery store is wearing a Jameson Williams jersey and saying, come on out here and, if you shop with us, you can be like Jameson Williams. Like, that's different than just using a highlight on social media.
I think the hard part about all of this is what we don't know is what are the contracts like when guys sign with schools, and what were they like when Jameson signed? Because certainly when I joined the band Perry, I signed a contract with the band that gave the right for the band to use my face in perpetuity, that you have to because you're going to release music, right? Like when you play big TV shows, like I've been lucky enough in my life to do the Tonight Show and, the Today Show and award shows and things like that. When you play them, you have to be part of SAG-AFTRA or some corresponding entity like that, and they get the opportunity to use your name, image, likeness in perpetuity in exchange for you getting paid to be on the show, even if you're only paid pennies for many of those shows. When I got to ESPN, my talent contract at ESPN allows them to use my name, image, likeness from ESPN work whenever they want, however they want. So sometimes they still repeat things that I was in while I was at ESPN, and I don't get paid for it. There's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way talent contracts work. I don't know what Jameson Williams signed when he got to Alabama, because what we don't know is in 2017, 18, whatever that was, were schools thinking about, well, player empowerment era is about to hit. I just don't know. So to his point, as he says, he's received no fair compensation for the full commercial value of his name, image, likeness. Defendants continuously financially benefit from Jameson Williams' name, image, and likeness rights while also doing so without providing him with just compensation, is what the lawsuit says. So to that end, has he signed anything? Like, basically, it sounds like he's saying, when you use my highlights on social media to promote your college, I should get paid. If you're going to use my highlights to promote your games, I should get paid. You're right. That's a slippery slope, because now all of a sudden what it does is it opens up the door for everybody that ever played, right? Like, now there becomes an argument. If you're Barry Sanders, you turning around saying, well, if you're Bo Jackson, or you're going back to Auburn and you're like, hey, whenever you use my name, whenever you use my image, you're going to have to pay me. And the interesting thing is, I see both sides. Like, I do understand somebody personally turning around and saying, well, if you're using me to promote your product, the fact that Peyton Manning jerseys are still sold for profit at University of Tennessee, Peyton Manning isn't seeing that money from those Tennessee jerseys. I can understand why Peyton would want to go turn around to Tennessee and say, hey, that's my number. We all know why you're selling it. I want my cut. I understand the players wanting their cut, but this all comes back to why we constantly talk about the need for collective bargaining in college sports, because these are the things that are addressed in the contracts of the NFL that may not have been addressed properly in the contracts of college football. And if that's the case, the floodgates could destroy college sports forever.
And it doesn't just stop at the NCAA, the Big Ten, and the SEC. We would probably have to pay for that photo. Like, right here on Yahoo Sports Daily, using that photo from a Yahoo Sports tweet of Jameson Williams. Who is to say that we now, if he does win this settlement and that precedent is set, who's to say that we wouldn't have to send Jameson Williams a check? Thank you so much for letting us use this photo. Like, who's to say that any other sports media platform, ESPN, CBS, Fox Sports, Amazon Prime, any sports media platform, whether it's live programming, whether it's, sports talk shows, who is to say every single time that you use a highlight, every single time that you use a photo, that you have to send, cash or a check to that person, say, all right, that's what I owe you for today's show. We'll see you again next week. And also that calls into question ownership of media, because Alabama or Ohio State or the Big Ten or the SEC can say, we own these things. These are ours. Yes, it uses your face, and yes, it uses your name, your image, and your likeness, your jersey, your last name, your face, but we own it. And you signed off on that whenever you joined this team. I would have to think that the SEC and the Big Ten, multi-billion-dollar corporations, say, yeah, it's your face and your image, but like, we own it. This is ours. ESPN, we own it. This is ours. We pay a king's ransom for these rights. It is ours, and you signed off on that. But I have to think, Fitzy, I mean, Jameson Williams has made $30 million on the field in his career. I have to think with endorsements and everything, he's made even more. Let's just say Jameson Williams has made $50 million in his career. He can afford pretty good lawyers. I don't think he's suing the NCAA if lawyers, very smart people that are making a lot of money, don't think that there's at least a little bit of a gray area and a little bit of a loophole to win this case. Because if you look at the recent history of the NCAA in court, doesn't look great for the NCAA. They've been doing a whole lot of losing and a whole lot of settling in court as of late. So who's to say that they can't win this one either? Even though I believe, in my very limited legal knowledge, don't think that there's any way that Jameson Williams can win this, the NCAA has not been very favorable in court as of late.
I mean, this is the same NCAA that didn't protect themselves well enough to actually keep video games going. Remember, Ed O'Bannon turned around and said, wait a minute. And the NCAA is like, I never thought about that. I always say this, Caroline, I'm an old man, but my first record contract all the way back in the 90s said that they owned the rights to our music anywhere in the universe. That was in record contracts in the 90s. They understood in the 90s. And you go to Mars and release music, we own you. I can't believe that the NCAA teams wouldn't have some sort of same procedure. Something to keep an eye out, though, because as this progresses, every other former college athlete in every single sport is watching this to see how it plays out, to see if this becomes class action or even bigger. We'll keep breaking it down. In the meantime, we have Major League Baseball to get to with an expert, one of the best in the business. Robert Flores is going to join us next. We'll get Roflo's thoughts on all the hirings and firings and what's next.
Kick is on the way. And Dante Wright will bring it out of the end zone. Right across the 5, the 10, the 15. Right across the 20. into New Mexico territory. 15-10. 5. Does he get in?
He did.
Touchdown,
He did.
Pirates.
Dante Wright goes back. He played like a center fielder at Yankee Stadium and then takes it the length of the building. The young man was electric on that kick return.
Do you not enjoy this?
No,
Would you rather not do it?
that's not in the cards.
Why not?
It's not an option. I've worked so hard for so long. I've built myself up to a position and I've dug myself into a hole.
But I feel like you've reached a point in your life where, correct me if I'm wrong, you could do other things.
What am I gonna do? There's nothing like a fight night check. That's the beauty of fighting.
NFL teams tanking this season are making a huge mistake. Why, good sir?
Okay. This show has nefarious producers who fashion my idle comments over text into hot takes. And frankly, I'm fine with that, to be honest. Let's talk about Manning for a second. Someone who has not yet reached his potential by any measure. There will never be a player, in my opinion, that is a surefire lock that is worth burning an entire NFL season for.
Edwards has got it. Throw, tip, intercepted. Destin Mack, the INT. And he makes the biggest play of the game defensively for Orlando.
Great coverage on the back end by the Orlando Pirates. 4th down and 4. Destin Mack in coverage. Big time hit by Kyrie Coleman leads to the interception.
Playoffs or practice? That's right. We're going to do a little MLB style game here, but we're going to bring in an absolute expert and icon where we ask a team if a player can keep up their good play. We're going to ask if a team or player can keep up their good play, aka playoffs, or they need to get back to basics. That'd be aka practice. And to join us for all of that, we're going to be bringing in Robert Flores of the MLB Network back with us in just a second. We've got him. All right, so Rofo, appreciate it. All right, here is the game. The game that we are going to play is playoffs or practice. So we'll figure out if you think they're going to stay on a heater, it can be a team or a player, then it's playoffs. And when you hear that, you'll hear the, of course, iconic playoff sound effect like this.
Playoffs?
And if it's going to go downhill and you think, all right, this person or team needs to go back to the drawing board, you just call that practice, and then we get some of this.
We're in here talking about practice.
See, we got it covered MLB style. So, Rofo, we'll start with the Phillies handing over the reins to interim manager Don Mattingly. The move alone, along with the star power on the roster, does that equal playoffs or practice for the Phillies moving forward?
I think it's playoffs.
Playoffs?
Yeah. Look, I think that this roster is just too good. And for whatever reason, they just needed a new voice in the room. But I thought that we saw kind of a snapshot of what this team is capable of a couple of nights ago. And Don Mattingly is no slouch, obviously. He is a near Hall of Fame former player, and he's a former manager of the year. He's been to the postseason plenty of times, was the Dodgers manager before Dave Roberts. So this is a guy that knows what he's doing. Also, there's the unique element of that his son, Preston, is in the front office. So I believe they're the first father-son GM manager duo in Major League Baseball history. So I can see the Phillies going on a bit of a run here.
So we'll go from one team that fired their manager to another team that could, question mark. The Mets have not yet made a managerial change yet, but keeping Carlos Mendoza at the helm, will that result in playoffs for the Mets or practice?
Well, I'm going to say playoffs just for the sake of this game. Now, whether or
Playoffs?
not they actually, yes, Jim Mora, thank you. Whether or not they get to the postseason, I don't know, because they are digging themselves quite a hole here. The issue I have with the Mets is they remade their entire roster for the most part. You know, there were some big pieces that are no longer here. No longer Brandon Nimmo, no longer Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil. And now you have the injuries to Juan Soto was out for almost a month. Francisco Lindor is now out, and he could be out longer. The starting pitching hasn't been great. So is that Carlos Mendoza's fault? And kind of just like how it was with Philadelphia. I don't feel like it was Rob Thompson's doing. I think there's some other factors beyond Carlos Mendoza's control, but I'm not sure changing a manager can be the elixir that may be what it is for the Philadelphia Phillies.
Is there an elixir that you think does exist? We'll get back to the game in a second, but is there something that you think could turn the Mets' fortunes around?
I don't know. I think that they have to just hope that the guys that are on their existing roster pitch better, play better, hit better. Jorge Polanco, who they thought could be kind of a Swiss Army knife, both at first base and move him around the infield, he's hurt. Luis Robert might have to go on the injured list with a sore back. Bo Bichette is starting to show signs, but he got off to a very slow start. Beyond Nolan McLean, as far as the starting pitching goes, there really hasn't been much consistency. So they have a lot of big problems right now. It's early, but again, they are digging themselves a big hole.
All right, let's stick in the division then. Ozzie Albies and the Braves are off to a red-hot start, destined for the playoffs, or should fans brace for some regression, meaning practice?
No, I think this is playoffs. Hit it, Jim Mora. Yep. The Braves are really good. And it's almost a bit of a surprise because I feel like for the last couple of seasons, this core hasn't lived up to their expectations collectively. Yeah, there's been some injuries there. Ronald Acuna Jr. missing, going out with another knee injury was certainly a factor. Ozzie Albies was also injured. But they are back. And they are getting some outstanding pitching, and they're doing all of this. By the way, I believe they're the only team in the league that is yet to have double-digit losses. But they're doing this without Ronald Acuna getting red hot. Spencer Strider is working his way back. We haven't seen him, although he should return this weekend from an oblique injury. They have the type of team that could give the Dodgers a run in the National League because they're good defensively. They've got star power, and right now they've shown that they can pitch the ball effectively as well.
Okay, so we'll go with the next one. I got to admit some biases to you first, though. Number one, you need to know that Kings Island's one of my favorite theme parks in the entire world. Number two, you need to know that Grater's ice cream is elite. But to balance it out, Skyline Chili is trash, which means I'm talking about Cincinnati. All right, Terry Francona's Reds are on fire. Playoffs or practice for Cincy?
Yeah, it's playoffs for me here as well.
Playoffs?
And by the way, I'm with you on Skyline Chili. Why are you? Is it chili on noodles? Is that it?
It's gross. Yes, yeah, it's disgusting.
I don't get it. I don't get it, but
It's
hey,
gross.
to each his own. But I love the Cincinnati Reds. They throw out, and again, this is a team that is also doing it without some signature players in their rotation. Hunter Green, we have not seen him, and he's their best pitcher. He's probably not going to be back until June. But what Terry Francona and his staff are putting together right now, Sal Stewart is a Rookie of the Year candidate. Ellie De La Cruz is an MVP candidate, and he's starting to figure it out at the plate from the right-hand side. He's always been a dynamic hitter from the left side. The right-hand side has been an area that has given him fits. He's starting to figure that out. So, yeah, I think that the Cincinnati Reds are a team that has some staying power in what is a very interesting and potentially compelling National League Central.
Might be a hot take, but I love those all red uniforms. Those are nice.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
They look,
I'm in on this.
they look good. I'm here for the all red.
Not
Not feeling
practice. That's practice.
We ain't here talking about practice.
Yeah, I would like to have maybe the jersey paired with white pants, and just to see what that would look like. But now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's not it either. I don't know.
I
You
want
gotta go
to
all
wear it
in.
once. I want to run through a wall once and then go, oh yeah, just so I can be the Kool-Aid man. Go ahead, Caroline. Sorry.
Nice Kool-Aid
Also-
reference there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Red jerseys, white pants sounds like a laundry nightmare. Everything's just going to come out pink. So let's just make it
Yeah,
easy on whoever's
that's a
doing the
good call.
laundry. All red. Throw it all in the same washing machine. But let's move
Good
on to
call.
this team because as a Houstonian, you know the Astros very well.
Yeah.
Talented roster off to a brutal start. Is a turnaround impending? Are we seeing the Stros in the playoffs, or is this practice?
I think it might be practice.
We in here talking about practice.
Yeah. I've been watching the Houston Astros closely since 1979, and this is the weirdest team I can recall. They are among the league leaders in runs scored. Offensively, Yordan Alvarez is having an MVP season, but man, they just cannot throw the ball over the plate with consistency. They walk too many batters. They give up too many homers. Yes, there are injuries. Hunter Brown is their best pitcher. He's out. Christian Javier, they thought he was their second best pitcher. He's out. Tatsuya Imai, who they signed from Japan. Big expectations there. He's had a tired arm. He has failed to live up to expectations. Their best pitcher is that guy right there, Spencer Arrighetti, who didn't even make the big league roster coming out of spring training. So they've got a lot of issues in the pitching department, and I don't know that there's a quick fix there.
All right, how about Murakami's hot start? Master dozen home runs already. Winnable division. White Sox, I can't believe I'm saying this, to the playoffs or practice?
I think that's practice.
We in here talking about practice.
Right. However, you can start to see the pieces forming of a dynamic young core. Murakami has been a revelation. I mean, the power is legit. There was some question coming over from Japan. Could he handle the velocity in the major leagues? Could he cut down on the swing or miss? Hey, the dude's shown that he can hit the ball out of the ballpark, and that's a very valuable commodity. Colson Montgomery is an emerging young star there for the White Sox. I don't think they have enough to keep up with, say, the Royals, the Tigers, the Guardians, but they're going to be pesky for the rest of the season, and I think that there's a lot to like about what they're building on the south side of Chicago.
White Sox fans deserve this. They've had so much bad for so long, so they deserve the excitement that Minetaka Murakami brings. All right, so just so you know,
No doubt.
Flo, Fitz is a lifelong Dodgers fan of the last 2 years. So let's talk about his team a little bit.
I'm in.
Yeah, lifelong fan. They are off to, as expected, a red hot start and look like one of the best teams in the league. Breaking news. So Los Angeles does not need to do a single thing at the trade deadline. The roster is good as is. Playoffs or practice?
Yeah, I'll say playoffs. With a tiny caveat. The guy that you showed there, Edwin Diaz, I want to make sure that he's right before I know, hey, do I need to go out on the trade market? Do I need to find a trade partner to shore up the bullpen? But they have an embarrassment of riches. I mean, look, they did just lose 2 of 3 to the Miami Marlins at home, losing yesterday. But as you said, they're off to a great start. Their backup catcher, Dalton Rushing, he's got, as last I checked, he's got 7 home runs. He's the backup catcher. And oh, by the way, he might be baseball's most interesting heel. He is annoying everyone as a backup catcher, and I love it. But they're doing all this with Blake Snell. We haven't even seen him. He's working his way back. But remember last year, it was the bullpen. What are they going to do? Especially in the postseason, the bullpen was an area of concern. And Edwin Diaz, he had the elbow surgery to clean up the loose bodies. So I want to make sure that he's right before I figure out, hey, this bullpen is set and we're ready to go for the postseason.
One more before we get you out of here. Cal Raleigh, big dumper. I feel like he was a cheat code for us when we launched the show. We got to talk about him every day. Not so good so far. So what do we think? The Mariners, playoffs or practice?
Yeah, I'll go playoffs. I still think that I think as of a few days ago, Cal Raleigh had homered in 4 straight games or something like that. So yes, the slow start was there. It was real, but it looks like he's starting to snap out of it a little bit. The batting average still isn't, what you want. But again, he's paid to hit homers. and call a great game behind the plate, and that's what he's been doing recently. I think that they just have too much starting pitching. And now what is going to be interesting is one of their pitchers is due back, and Emerson Hancock, who has been filling in, has been throwing the ball very well. So are they going to go to a 6-man rotation? Do they trade one to maybe bolster the offense? But I like the Mariners still in the American League West, with the Texas Rangers maybe nipping at their heels.
We got a tweet from our friend of the show, mutual friend, Steve Godfrey. He comes on with us all the time, and he said to ask your favorite former TNA wrestling employee. So I'm just going to do it this way. Playoffs or practice, Godfrey, your favorite former TNA wrestling employee?
Golly, I'm going to have to go practice, because I'm going to have to go with Abyss.
Practice.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go with Abyss as my favorite former TNA employee. No, I'm just kidding. Steve's great. I was tickled to see that tweet, and I love this. What he has taken his wrestling experience and done with his media career. So it gives me joy to see his tweet there. So tell him I said hello.
Oh, we will for sure. He's the host of MLB Central on MLB Network. Robert Flores. You can follow him on Twitter, X @Roflo. We appreciate your time. Always a blast hanging out with you.
Got it.
Playoffs for you nonstop, my friend. We appreciate you.
Playoffs?
Appreciate it. Have a great weekend, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks,
I can talk with him all day long. It's electric. Coming up next, the NBA has finally solved the draft issue. I'm here to tell you why next.
Does Orlando win it in overtime, or does this instant classic continue? Deep drop and throw, end zone, Thomas Owens. That's an Orlando overtime winner. That is the most decorated receiver in the history of the franchise. Of course, he's the one to end it.
He's like 6'5", 230, like insane athlete, really, really good arm. And I don't know if he'll ever be the 4th best quarterback in the league, where he's like Josh Allen, kind of like always in, MVP conversations, but he can be in the Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott tier, where he's like kind of always quarterback 7-ish, and like can have those years and moments where he's playing like an all-pro. Like that to me is the best outcome.
What put you over the top to like, I want to go to Indiana?
I was really close to going to a couple other schools. However, the point that really cemented me into Indiana is Coach Signetti really focusing on the development. His big selling point was, hey, I don't know, like other schools are trying to sell you on if we're going to win a national championship, if we're going to win all these games. I just know one thing I can do is develop quarterbacks.
It's all about alignment and assignment, whether you're playing junior high football or IFL football. Myler fakes the give, goes the other way with it. He launches himself into the end zone, and he's going to get the touchdown.
That's just a dynamic effort. That is a will to want to get it in the end zone there, because he knew that he was running out of space.
Yes.
And so he thought, there's only one way you can go here, and that's up and over.
So if I trade my top 3 protected pick and want to do whatever I can to keep it, I'm actually incentivized to tank harder, so I'm in the bottom 3 and get fewer lottery balls. Good one! That from Mike as he rips apart the new proposal from the NBA being called the 3-2-1 lottery. It expands the lottery in the draft from 14 to 16 teams. Every team that doesn't make the playoffs gets into it. The bottom 3 teams in the league get worse odds than the other 13 teams, but have a floor of 12th in the draft. So it's complicated. It is admittedly complicated, but the biggest part to know about this is that if you end up with the worst, second worst, or third worst record in the NBA, you actually have lower odds. You still have a shot at it, but you have lower odds at getting the first overall pick. Caroline, it seems to be some up and down on this. Does this fix tanking to you?
It helps. It does help, because if you are one of the 3 worst teams in the NBA, you at least have a competitive incentive. So we could be seeing, the Sacramento Kings and the New Orleans Pelicans of the league actively trying to win basketball games. And I think competitive basketball is an important thing. But I think there's two different conversations here. I personally do not like this because I think that you are punishing teams that are actually bad. Like, a team that's actually bad, I think, should benefit from a draft, because the point of a draft, to me, is to allow the worst teams in the league a better shot at getting franchise-changing players. So that way, the worst teams can then be competitive, or at least the fans of the worst teams have a light at the end of the tunnel, some hope for your team to get better. But that's how I view a draft. That's how the NFL draft works, right? The worst team gets the best pick. The worst team has the best chance at getting the best player and becoming competitive. But I think we all have to shift our perspective of what the NBA draft is, or what the NBA draft lottery is. Because no longer is it we're giving the worst teams the best chance at getting better, because that's not what it is. If the three worst teams don't have as high of a chance of getting the number 1 overall pick as maybe some other teams, then that's not what it is. You are kind of punishing teams for being bad. So instead, with the draft lottery, under the new rules, under this construct, the draft lottery is less incentivizing being bad and more incentivizing not tanking. So if that is truly the number 1 priority of the NBA, which it kind of sounds like it is, right? Adam Silver has talked for so long about getting tanking out of the game, which I don't think that you're going to totally and completely get tanking out of the game, because anytime you incentivize being bad, you're going to have at least a little bit of tanking. You just have to be a little bit more strategic with it now. So it's more about incentivizing not tanking than it is incentivizing being bad. I don't believe in that. I don't think that's in the spirit of a draft, but that I think that they are at least getting closer to accomplishing what their bottom line is, and that is getting tanking out of the game.
So the NFL draft is perfect. I love it. I have no notes.
It's perfect.
I
Perfect.
watched a year ago when idiots sat in front of microphones and said, "Oh my God, we need a lottery in the NFL, just like the NBA has, because Cooper Flagg was suddenly going to an unexpected destination, and everybody thought the lottery picks was a great idea for that one night." It's not. Nothing about a lottery is ever going to be a great idea to me. So if I already acquiesce to the fact that I think the best way, if we really want to reward the worst teams, give the worst teams the first pick in the draft. But what's interesting to me is, since the new odds were implemented in 2019, the team with the worst record in the NBA has never won the first pick in the draft, ever. Since 2019, when they made the changes they made, ever. In fact, the average pick for the team with the worst record is actually 5th over that time. So if the argument is, well, now worst teams don't get a shot, okay, worst teams already aren't getting the first pick. That's exactly what we just saw with Dallas winning the lottery and getting Cooper Flagg. To me, this actually it takes enough away from being terrible to start to incentivize teams to, man, we can't be bottom 3. Whatever happens, we can't be bottom 3. Now, are there issues with protected picks? Yes. Are they going to have to figure that out? Sure. Were there trades made before anybody had this concept that are going to be more difficult now? Yes. Does this play into things they're going to have to figure out over the next couple of years? Yeah. But ultimately, I look at all of that. I've even seen the argument, well, now, when you've got the play-in game, our team's going to try and lose the play-in so that they can get in to the draft, so that they can have higher odds at finding their way to the number 1 overall pick. And to that, I would say, who cares if they do? The play-in is one night. If your argument is, oh my God, we've got to stop teams losing all season long so they can be more interesting, so that we don't have a third of the league that we don't care about anymore, well, then who cares about one night in the play-in? Like, genuinely, who cares about one game? If you're trying to fix 10 teams over here that you think are actively trying to suck every single night, and it's ruining 5 months of the season, that feels like, quick math, a lot more than one night, one game, one play-in. So if a team chooses to choke in the play-in, I don't know if they will or not. I think teams would still covet the opportunity to get into a playoff series. I think teams still covet the money that comes from playoff home games. I think teams still covet the opportunity to get in. But if you believe they're going to tank their way out of the play-in, that's just collateral damage. At the end of the day, who cares? I think this actually does a pretty good job of fixing the problem. And I sat on this show with you and said, I don't think that the problem can be fixed. This is about as close to happy as I think we can be, because it does at least still give those top 3 teams a chance. But it tells those top three, or those worst three teams, I guess I should say in this instance, it tells them, hey, if you go all in on being absolute trash, you're going to have a shot at the number 1 pick, but it's not going to be great. It at least makes teams want to try so that they're not at the bottom of the barrel.
Which is accomplishing the bottom line, which is we want to try and curb tanking. So I do think it does help a little bit. And also to your point, the play-in kind of sucks anyways. Like, does anyone like really care about the play-in if it's not your team playing in it? It's like, fine if the integrity of the play-in is just shifted a little bit. Also, look, I'd be naive to think that no team is ever going to consider throwing a game in the play-in if they think that they have absolutely no shot at winning that game or moving forward in the postseason. But also, like, it's the postseason. It's not the playoffs, but it's the postseason. So I also kind of think that while I think organizations tank, players don't, and coaches don't. So if you're playing in the postseason, I don't think that you're all of a sudden going to see an epidemic of teams just not trying. But I will say this, Fitz. If you need a calculator and a rocket science degree in order to figure out when your team is going to be drafting, maybe that's the problem with your draft. I was doing some research yesterday when we had our conversation about the Phoenix Suns, about where do they go next? Do they move on from Devin Booker? I was trying to figure out how many draft picks the Phoenix Suns have over the next 5 years. And you should have seen me in real time. It was like that scene of Zach Galifianakis from The Hangover when he has like all of these numbers and like all of these formulas kind of over his head. That was me. I was just trying to figure out, when the heck are you picking in next year's draft? And there was a full Harry Potter novel next to it of like, it's the worst of these picks, if this, then that. But if it's raining, then it's that pick. But also, if you're wearing blue, then it's this pick. It was, look, why is it so freaking complicated? The NFL is the standard of professional sports, in my opinion. It's the highest viewership, it's the most money, it's the best product. In the NFL, it's you traded 2 first-round picks. Done. In the NFL, it's you get the 14th overall pick next year. Done. It's pretty simple and it's pretty easy to wrap your mind around. But no, in the NBA, it has to be like you stand on one leg and hold your breath, and then in 2028, you might swap picks with these 4 other teams. Why does it have to be so freaking confusing?
You're right. I mean, think of how many times we see an NBA guy get drafted wearing a hat, doing an interview, and they're telling us in the broadcast that he's already been traded. His rights have already been traded somewhere else. It's like, he doesn't even know. And now that picture is absolute. Could you imagine if in the NFL you constantly had hold up the jersey, and while they're holding up the jersey, we're like, actually, he no longer plays for the Dolphins. He's now a Tennessee Titan. And that picture of him holding up a Dolphins jersey looks pretty asinine, right? Like, so to that point, it
We
gets
have
wild
had
and
that in the
confusing.
past, to be fair.
Yeah.
But not
It's
nearly
very
as
rare.
much as the NBA.
It's very rare. The NBA already made everything complicated. Like, the number of times I have to text Bobby Marks to say, hey, Bobby, please explain this salary cap thing to me like I'm 5 years old. Like, that's part of NBA culture, is that the salary cap is complicated. The tax limits are complicated. Some of the roster exemptions are complicated. How much guys can make in different situations are complicated. The draft is complicated. All of this just kind of sucks. But I think this is a less suckier version of the draft for me. And I will say this loud, because you were just talking about would a team actually consider tanking out of the play-in. A couple of weeks ago, when we were sitting here, if we were all sitting here before Orlando played Charlotte, this show, many shows, would have been asking the question, should Orlando just bag on this thing so that they can get into the lottery and try and get a top pick? We would have done that. We would have been sitting here saying, oh, man, is it actually, rather than just get into the playoffs and get murdered by the Pistons, why not lose the play-in game and go? And now how would we all look? Let's take a lesson from that. For everybody that thinks that the play-in could be tainted by tanking, I would just say, hey, this year's a great example of play-in teams not only, again, making noise in the first round, having a shot to win a first-round playoff matchup, getting extra home games, which is extra revenue, which is extra merch, which is extra beer sales, which is extra money to the NBA owners. So I think all of this just plays into why, for me, I absolutely love this. We will continue to scrutinize every ounce of it because it's the NBA, it's the draft, and it's tanking. But coming up, We've got a massive weekend for F1. We're going to talk to Stuart Codling next to break it all down for us.
Another matchup between the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. How are these teams going to guard each other?
If you're Denver, you're going to have to find a comfort throwing different coverages at Minnesota and Anthony Edwards. It can't just be one thing. The same goes for Nikola Jokic, where honestly, whatever you do, I'm eventually going to get to a point where you do not feel comfortable with how you are guarding me, no matter who's on me.
Handoff, Thomas busting it through for the end zone. Touchdown! Tavion Thomas and Tucson back in front with 16 seconds left. 1 second, final play of the game. Jerome Johnson looking in the end zone. Johnson, far corner, jump ball, knocked into the crowd. Game over. Tucson wins.
Playing basketball with your back to the basket and not able to see the floor in the same way was a whole lot different for LeBron. And so that's why it took a little bit for him to feel comfortable in that back to the basket positioning. He's got more post-ups this postseason than Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, and Alperen Şengün combined. This is a huge story, and what a wrinkle that LeBron James has thrown into this series.
When you guys talk about your relationship and your friendship and your respect, there are some people who think like, well, do they want to kill each other? Do they want to fight each other? Do they want to hurt each other? You have to do that when you fight someone.
Yeah. If you have like females sparring in the gym, like it's really hard to not to go heavy. Like women just like, they cut that, you know, emotional thing off and they just like, it's me or you. And Rhonda has that, I have that.
Race week returns. We're back racing in Miami this week. It is a massive week for F1, so we're going to welcome in Stuart Codling, Grand Prix editor at Autosport, joining us ahead of a massive weekend. All right, so let's start with Miami. How does Miami compare to some of the other Grand Prix cities?
Well, it's a fascinating place, isn't it? And I think one of the really good things the promoter has done is kind of doubled down on Miami's image. It's kind of having a little bit of fun with its own image. So you have the famous fake marina with real boats on it. And also this year, a fake cruise ship. It's actually quite funny. And I'll tell you what, we all get into the spirit of it. My colleagues and I and the track team, we have a WhatsApp group. I've just this morning changed the picture to one of Don Johnson wearing a nice pink shirt and one of those linen jackets with the sleeves rolled up.
And having these F1 races in the United States and some of these premier cities like Miami and Vegas and Austin, I feel like that has elevated the profile so much of F1, at least in the United States. But how do you think Apple's involvement with F1 can raise the profile even more for the sport?
I think it's a very exciting deal. And particularly when you look at the numbers they're paying, I think it's like $1 gazillion or something per year for the rights to stream Formula One. A few years ago, you just would not have had that. So very exciting news, I think, for the American audience, because whenever a new broadcaster comes in, whatever country it happens to be, they usually bring fresh ideas and fresh energy. And I remember I grew up in the 1980s in the UK, as you can tell by my accent. There was only one other guy in my class at school who watched Formula One. The BBC screened Formula One at that time. And if there was something that they deemed more exciting that weekend, they'd just not bother. So if it rained at Wimbledon during the week and they had to broadcast the tennis on the weekend, scrap the Formula One. And then ITV came in, a commercial broadcaster. You got a much more extensive program, much more in depth, guaranteed live coverage. And that's just got better and better. I'm sure what Apple will bring to the US audience is a much more elevated product than what they had before.
So we just got back from a small break in the season with the Middle East races being called off. It allowed for some tweaks, some changes. Everybody can make some adjustments with the new regulation. So who do you think can sort of surprise us in Miami with this break?
Well, anyone and everyone. This is kind of like the first version out of beta testing mode for the Formula One teams. And what this interruption has done is kind of throw what you might call a curveball into the dynamic. Now, this season, the logistics costs of Formula One have been rolled into the budget cap that governs how much the teams can spend. And that was going to have a big effect on how they staged their upgrades through the year. Because obviously, if you'd say designed a new floor, you didn't really want to have to air freight it over to China for the second Grand Prix of the year, because that would cost you in terms of your budget cap allocation. So what this has done is completely changed how they were going to plan out their upgrades. Now, Miami was often a race where people brought big upgrade steps, the first ones of the year. How big they're going to be, it's going to be quite interesting, but it's too early for us to see a lot of what we call in Formula One convergence, which is where someone spots something clever that another team's doing and rips the idea off and comes up with their own. The lead times are just too long for that. You might see some small ticket items being copied, but for the most part, a lot of the things we'll see this weekend are things the teams have been working on since pre-season, because with the big new rule changes, a lot of them were really, really fixed on just getting cars that worked rather than actually necessarily exploring the limits of performance.
You bring up the rule changes. Max Verstappen has been very outspoken against these new regulations. So do you think that this could just be some growing pains for the sport, or is Max Verstappen's future in F1 in question?
Well, it's a little bit of growing pains. Like I said, these regulations are very much in beta because of this kind of near 50-50 split of power from the electrical motor and the internal combustion engine. And what's the effect that's had on the racing is that the driver is no longer fully in charge of how much boost they get. So there's machine learning algorithms that learn the optimum pattern of recharge and deployment through the lap. And if the driver puts their foot on the throttle where they're not supposed to, they don't get the power. And guess what? A four-time world champion doesn't like that because he's the best driver in the world. And why not? I completely agree with his outlook on that. Whether he's actually so demotivated that he wants to quit Formula One entirely, I can think of multiple million reasons per year in dollars why he wouldn't want to quit straight away. And I'll bet if Red Bull can turn around his car and give him something a bit quicker under him, he might change his mind a little bit. But yeah, it's fair to say he's not a fan of not really being fully in charge of his motor car. And I think a lot of the fan base is in accord with him there.
So educate me then, because on top of all of these regulations, you also have every track, every climate, every atmosphere is so different, right? So for the drivers, there's so many adjustments. Miami is a much different track and a much different experience driving than Vegas is. How do you sort of figure out these regulations while you're also figuring out a new track, while you're also figuring out all the differences that makes to your vehicle?
Well, that's a very good point you bring up there. And I think that's one of the reasons why the minor rules tweaks that have been introduced about are surrounding this deployment and recharging through the lap for this weekend have actually been so small, because the teams were really pushing back against making big changes. They're still learning how these cars work. And as you say, each track's different. It depends on how many slow corners there are, how much heavy braking there is. The ratio of straightaways to corners all plays into how much recharging can be done through the lap. And then, of course, that has an impact on how much power they can use during the lap, because these cars are constantly filling up, draining, filling up, draining. So it's a big learning process for the teams. And one of the main reasons for all these rule changes being very, very slight as they just try and tweak and optimize around the right balance. But yeah, Miami's a very different circuit. The asphalt is temporary, so it generally is low grip. So what happens through the weekend is that as the Grand Prix sessions happen, as the support series happen, more and more rubber gets laid down on the track, and so it gets faster. So that makes it much more difficult when you're changing the setup of your car, because how much of that is reflected in what you're doing to the car, how much of it is just the track getting faster because of all these other cars going around. It's so many unknowns in Formula One whenever you come to a new track.
That is fascinating. Just the amount of external conditions that are totally and completely out of the driver's control and playing such a massive part of this race. We've seen Lewis Hamilton have a surprisingly strong start to the season with Ferrari. So do you think he's a legitimate contender to really challenge Mercedes in South Beach?
Well, maybe, because you never know what's going to happen with Ferrari. They might have found something. Their upgrade package may transform the car. What we've seen so far is that the Ferrari hasn't been quite as quick as the Mercedes in terms of the speed it can do when it's running independently. But because of the way they've configured their engine, they have a slightly smaller turbocharger. So it has less inertia when they're just trying to give it the gas from the start. So you've seen the Ferraris make really, really fast starts. And that tends to enable them to leapfrog the Mercedes. And once they're in the mix with the Mercedes drivers can't get away. So it's only when something happens, maybe there's a safety car, maybe someone pits at an unexpected time. Once the Mercedes get separated and they can drive at the speed they want to drive, they tend to move away into the distance. So hopefully, if Ferrari can find something that can enable them to challenge Ferrari sort of measure for measure, that will bring them back into the mix. But certainly it's been great to see Lewis himself again. He's a driver who always wears his heart on his sleeve. And for the past few years, he's really just the characteristics of the previous generation of cars haven't worked for him. And every race, he's just been absolutely miserable. So it was really nice in the first couple of Grand Prix of the year to speak to him. And he was really up and happy. And I think that's really good to see someone who's so important to the sport being really happy and engaged again.
Cadillac has struggled in its first F1 season, I should say. Is that common for a new team? How has the rules and regulations sort of amplified that?
Well, the answer to that question is yes and no. So the last really new team that came in was Haas 10 years ago, another American entrant. And because they bought as many bits as they could from Ferrari, they were actually really competitive straight away. Now, the general pattern for new teams in Formula One is to not actually be that good. So the last major intake of new teams in 2010, one didn't even make it to the grid at all. Another one only got one car, and they basically said to the driver at the beginning of practice, paint's still wet, basically, go slowly and just do one lap and then come back in and we'll see what happens. The car's not ready. So to have Cadillac come from having an empty warehouse, no staff, nothing, 2.5 years ago, to actually having two cars on the grid, I think is a remarkable achievement. And you have to bear in mind, for the beginning of this season, there was a sort of shakedown at the Barcelona circuit. Williams, a team that next year will have been in business for 50 years, was not ready for that, and Cadillac was. So maybe the Cadillacs aren't the fastest cars on the track, but to actually be here is pretty much an achievement. It's really good. And in the grand scheme of things, they're not that far off. They're in a bit of a race of their own. The cars aren't reliable yet, but I think that is to be expected given the massive rule changes we've seen. So it's not just bringing a new team to the grid, but adapting to an entirely new technical format, which really has got a lot of the other teams bamboozled as well.
Stuart, we do a segment on this show called Monday Headlines Today, where we try and predict the biggest stories in sports from the weekend. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. What do you think will be the biggest storyline coming out of Miami this weekend?
Well, 2 years ago, McLaren had quite a ropey start to the season. The car wasn't quick. They pinned their hopes on a technical upgrade they were putting on the car in Miami. And look what happened. Lando Norris won the Grand Prix and ended up challenging for the World Championship at the end of the season. 2 years on, he's the sitting world champion. McLaren haven't had the greatest start to the season, but they're pinning their hopes on a big technical upgrade. So maybe what we'll be talking about on Monday is Lando Norris winning his first Grand Prix of the season and maybe getting his title defense back on track.
Stuart, we appreciate your expertise, your knowledge. Thanks so much for sharing it with us all the way from across the pond. Thank you so much for the time and the expertise.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Great
Stuart.
stuff from Stuart. Check out Yahoo Sports coverage of the Miami Grand Prix starting this weekend. You can watch F1 practice and qualifying coverage for free on yahoosports.com and, of course, the Yahoo Sports app. Free practice one, I should say, begins at noon Eastern on Friday, May 1st, while qualifying takes place at 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, May 2nd. The Miami Grand Prix itself will stream on Apple TV at 4 p.m. Sunday, May 3rd. For more, just go to yahoosports.com/racing. All right, coming up next, we will get you caught up on everything you need to know with the quarterback carousel that continues to swirl. Figure out where some rookies are going to land.
Kick is on the way. And Dante Wright will bring it out of the end zone. Right across the 5, the 10, the 15. Right across the 20. Into New Mexico territory. 15, 10. 5. Does he get in?
He did.
Touchdown,
He did.
Pirates.
Dante Wright goes back. He played like a center fielder at Yankee Stadium and then takes it the length of the building. The young man was electric on that kick return.
Do you not enjoy this?
No.
Would you rather not do it?
That's not in the cards.
Why not?
It's not an option. I've worked so hard for so long. I've built myself up to a position and I've dug myself into a hole.
But I feel like you've reached a point in your life where, correct me if I'm wrong, you could do other things.
What am I going to do? There's nothing like a fight night check. That's the beauty of fighting.
NFL teams tanking this season are making a huge mistake. Why, good sir?
Okay. This show has nefarious producers who fashion my idle comments over text into hot takes. And frankly, I'm fine with that, to be honest. Let's talk about Manning for a second. Someone who has not yet reached his potential by any measure. There will never be a player, in my opinion, that is a surefire lock that is worth burning an entire NFL season for.
Edwards has got it. Throw, tip, intercepted. Destin Mack, the INT. And he makes the biggest play of the game defensively for Orlando.
Great coverage on the back end by the Orlando Pirates. 4th down and 4. Destin Mack in coverage. Big time hit by Kyrie Coleman leads to the interception.
The Jets hosted Russell Wilson for a visit, considering him as an option to be Geno Smith's number 2 quarterback, according to a source, which brings us to a simple premise here, really, Caroline. One of the more professional and adult games we've ever done. We're going to figure out QB2 or number 2. So we're going to take a look at draftees that have a chance to win their respective backup role and figure out by week 1, are they QB2 in the backup or are they number 2? So we'll start with Cade Klubnik after that Rosenblatt news. Will Cade be Geno Smith's backup in New York, or we buy Russell Wilson instead? So you got Cade, QB2, or number 2?
Number 2, for a couple of reasons. Cade Klubnik was stinky last year at Clemson. Now, the season previously, there was very good reason why he was projected to be a top pick in this year's draft, why he was projected to be a Heisman Trophy winner. Everyone was kind of zeroing in on Cade Klubnik as one of the best, if not the best, returning quarterbacks in college football this past year. But last year at Clemson, he struggled to move the ball downfield. He got rattled easily by pressure from defenses. So for that, I think he's number 2. And also, Jets quarterbacks stink. Like, let's just call it what it is, okay? Quarterbacks, or the Jets are where quarterbacks go to die. So if you are a quarterback coming out of college who wasn't overly inspiring in your final year in college, going into an organization that does not have a strong recent history in developing quarterbacks, and quarterbacks have found more life and more success after New York than they have in New York, then why am I going to have any sort of faith the New York Jets are going to move forward with Cade Klubnik with any sense of, stability at all? So I'm going number 2 here.
Yeah, I am too. And look, it's an interesting situation because they traded up 18 spots in the 4th round to pick him. So they obviously like something about him. But teams rarely turn around and say, ooh, well, we'll go get this guy in the 4th round that will eventually be our starter. So it feels to me like they're picking Cade Klubnik, knowing that they're developing a long-term backup, which I think is smart roster building. To have a backup quarterback that you can just have in your building, in your system for a long time is smart. Like Cade Klubnik, I don't think anybody's looking at Cade saying, well, maybe he can take away the Jets' need for a quarterback next year. We're not going there. So the fact that they're even talking to Russ, though, tells you that they have a very long-term development plan for him. So I think number 2 is probably the right spot for that. How about this one? Carson Beck, a surprising pick to many, although I will say as we were preparing for our draft shows, I kept hearing from Nate Tice that Carson Beck was going to be higher selected than we thought. But Carson Beck, selected by Arizona, is he going to be QB2 or is he going to be number 2?
I'm doubling down on the poo-poo. I do think that Carson Beck is more number 2. Now, I do think that Carson Beck has a shot, less because of Carson Beck and who he is as a quarterback, and more so because the Arizona Cardinals quarterback room is number 2. I mean, when you're competing with Gardner Minshew and Keaton Slovis for a backup job behind Jacoby Brissett, like, yeah, I think you and I would also both have a shot in that Arizona quarterback room. I do think another thing that's kind of on Carson Beck's side is that he has a lot of experience in college football. He's a multi-year starter. He has experience in the biggest games on the biggest stages in college football. So he is closer to a finished product than maybe a Drew Aller. But overall, I think Carson Beck is a turnover machine. So I'm going to lean more number 2 than QB2, but also I think anybody in this Arizona Cardinals quarterback room has a shot.
I think by the end of the year, he is a number 2, number 1. So what I mean by that is I don't think he's going to end up being the backup. I think he's going to end up starting there because the Cardinals aren't going to win any games. The Cardinals are going to go.
He's going to be a Dookie starter.
So yeah, he's going to be a Dookie starter. He's going to be one of those starters that you're like, yep, but that's okay. We're getting to give it to about week 6, and that's when we'll start to hear Cardinals fans say, we're going to have the best quarterback in next year's draft, so none of it's going to matter. Right now, according to some sports books, it varies everywhere. The Cardinals are favored to have the fewest regular season wins above the Miami Dolphins. So, I look at the Cardinals and say, even though I think they have some really good pieces, they don't have a quarterback. So at the end of the day, if I have to choose between Jacoby Brissett and 6 wins or Carson Beck and 3 wins, I'll take Carson Beck and the 3 wins. Let's go long-term. Let's get our quarterback. So I think he ends up he's not going to be the backup. He's going to end up being the starter, and he's going to be a really bad starter at that. How about this one next? Carson Beck, from Carson Beck, we go to Garrett Nussmeier, somebody that a year ago was supposed to be a Heisman finalist and one of the top picks in the draft. And instead, he's a 7th round pick. So to Kansas City, though, Garrett Nussmeier, once Mahomes is healthy, is Nussmeier number 2 or is he QB2?
I think he's QB2, and pay no attention to the helmet behind me. I promise this is a totally and completely unbiased take. I think he could be QB2 for a couple of reasons. One, the reason why we saw a massive regression from Garrett Nussmeier from his first year as a starter to his second year as a starter is because he was injured. There was a cyst on his spine, and I could clearly see, as somebody who was an LSU fan, I watched every single down and every single snap of Garrett Nussmeier. He was clearly not right this past season. I mean, we still saw some flashes of great things, the gunslinger that Garrett Nussmeier can be, both positive and negative connotation. But I think that it wasn't just a regression of the kind of quarterback he is or the guy that he is, just a natural regression. I think he was hurt. So I think that gives him maybe an inside track at being the backup. And also, Justin Fields is the backup in Kansas City. I don't think Justin Fields is all that great. So I do think Garrett Nussmeier can beat Justin Fields out. But I also, I kind of take what GMs tell me in the draft. And GMs thought Drew Aller and Cade Klubnik and Carson Beck were a better value than Garrett Nussmeier by the tune of 3 to 4 rounds. That's jarring to me. That is crazy to me. We even had Stephen Godfrey on the show last week, and he said that he thought Garrett Nussmeier was the second best quarterback in this draft, and he fell all the way to 7. Surely not all 32 general managers in the National Football League are overlooking him 6 and 7 times over. So that's a red flag to me, but I do think he can beat out Justin Fields for the job.
Yeah, I think Justin Fields at the end is going to end up being a trick play guy that comes in kind of like the Taysom Hill for Kansas City. I think Garrett has a real shot at being the number 2 quarterback. So I'll go with he ends up being QB2, I should say, in this exercise behind Mahomes. And then every year in the preseason, he's going to come out and play well enough that everybody says, wow, should they trade Garrett Nussmeier? Because he's going to have the advantage of learning from Andy Reid and just hanging out back there. So I think Garrett Nussmeier, even though obviously being a 7th round pick, is going to help his NFL career. The funny thing is in a couple of years, we're going to be trying to remind ourselves where Cade Klubnik is. I think Garrett Nussmeier has a real chance of at least trying to build himself a long career in the NFL because of where he was drafted. I think he ends up QB2. So Drew Aller got some just Ben Roethlisberger out here throwing shade all over Drew Aller over the course of the last 24 hours. Drew Aller, QB2 or number 2?
I think number 2, not because he's super stinky, but because if you ask me today, who would I rather have as my backup quarterback, Will Howard or Drew Aller, I'm going to take Will Howard. So I think it's just because of the other quarterbacks in that Pittsburgh Steelers room. Now, important to point out, Aaron Rodgers has yet to sign a contract in Pittsburgh. We know the most unpredictable enigma, wink, wink, in the NFL is Aaron Rodgers. There is a world where Aaron Rodgers might not end up in Pittsburgh. So for that, you would have to say that Drew Aller is QB2 because they have another option. If you want to go sign, Ryan Tannehill off the street, of course, that would be a possibility. But I lean number 2 just because I defer to the other quarterbacks in that room over Drew Aller, who has some massive question marks for me.
Yeah, I keep looking at this thinking, if you can't beat out Will Howard, then you probably don't belong on a roster in the NFL. Conversely, if Will Howard can't beat out Drew Aller, he probably doesn't belong on a roster in the NFL. I think they're fairly interchangeable. So what's interesting is that Will Howard getting some benefit of the doubt. Well, it's a new coaching staff. I think what Mike McCarthy and the new coaching staff told you is that they want to see somebody other than Will Howard. So to me, that's not an encouraging thing for Will Howard that they just took Drew Aller. And I think it is an encouraging thing for Drew Aller. The new regime doesn't want to waste a draft pick that early. So, and I mean, McCarthy is a quarterback guy. So there is an element here of a quarterback guy helped pick this guy. So I feel like Drew Aller has a real shot at being QB2, even though I don't think he's great.
And let's not forget he did suffer a season-ending ankle injury last year. So that was 6 months ago. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the timeline for an ankle injury, but I think that's at least something to consider here, that Drew Aller might be going into training camp not 100%. So it's not just about the quarterback that he is. It's also about his availability and his health.
Now, Taylor Green, another quarterback selected, a long shot to be the Browns quarterback too, because it's a very stacked Browns quarterback room. As we all know, last year they took Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd, Shedeur Sanders in the 5th. They've also got Deshaun Watson. Now they take Taylor Green, who's more of a weapon. Again, more maybe a Taysom Hill sort of thing. But we did get some quarterback news as yesterday. Mary Kay Cabot, who comes on the show frequently, said she believes Deshaun Watson is currently the front runner for the job. She went as far as to say that they should just announce it to get in there. And look, if you were watching our draft show, something that Nate Tice said very clearly on our draft show is that the Browns have been soft launching this to prepare the blow for everybody. Deshaun Watson's going to be the starter. So what do we make? Now they've got a stacked quarterback room, a lot of bodies there. But Caroline, what do we make of the report that, the Browns are going to be starting Deshaun? It seems like it's a lot closer to official today than it was a month ago.
Let me just say, if you have to prepare your fan base for the blow of saying that the guy that you guaranteed $40 million a year to is going to be your starting quarterback, that says everything that I need to know about how you feel about giving Deshaun Watson all of that money. But that's a conversation for a different day. Why today? Why on yesterday, Wednesday, April 29th, did the Cleveland Browns feel the need to say who was the front runner in that room? Because I am of the belief in life and in football, you never have to make a decision until you have to. You never have to say anything definitive until you have to. How many times do we see these quarterback battles go all the way up until the day before game 1 of the NFL season? We see it all the time, even when it's so clear and obvious of who the front runner is or who QB1 is going to be. It's because these coaches keep their cards close to the vest, whether it's for a tactical advantage or because they don't have to make up their decision in May or June or July or August or April in the Browns case. So I don't think that Mary Kay Cabot is reporting this. I don't think that whoever her source is within the building is telling her this to report this, unless they want this out there. So why do the Browns want this out there so early? Is it to push Shedeur Sanders? Is it to give him a chip on his shoulder? Because I think he's got plenty of those. Or is it just to go ahead and nip all of this in the bud and say that Deshaun Watson is in fact going to be our starting quarterback this year? I don't think that's wise for the Browns to kind of back themselves into this hole way earlier than they need to.
Unless Todd Monken has seen something that makes it very definitive for him. I mean, that's my answer to this is that Todd Monken, like when a coach takes a job, so often as a fan of a team that has replaced coaches so many times, I laugh about this. Coaches take a job, they watch a little film and they come in and they're always like, yeah, we're going to be ready to compete right away. And then they spend a few minutes in the building really breaking down what they have. And it's like, oh, dear God, we're not ready to compete at all, right? So for me, I look at this and say, part of this report that's significant, Todd Monken hopes to name or identify a starter by the end of minicamp, June 9th through 11th. So what, about a month and a half from now, he hopes to identify exactly who's going to be starting. I just think that they're softening the blow now so that we all expect it, so that the noise is a little quieter when they get into it. This, to me, just screams Todd Monken has now spent the last several months ripping through every ounce of film that they have, spending time around the facility, talking to people, and he's decided that in his offense with what he wants to run, Deshaun Watson is going to be the guy. Now, is that Monken's decision? Is that ownership's decision? Is that a front office decision? We'll never know. Like, we just genuinely will never know. But to me, this screams. Go ahead.
Can we speculate? Do you think it would be a coach's decision to announce who the starting quarterback is going to be in April? Or does that sound like an ownership decision of, we have to make this work? We traded the farm for Deshaun. We gave Deshaun everything. Deshaun has been nothing but a PR disaster for us from the second that he's walked in this room. We have to at least try to make this work with him. And we feel like we can make it work with a brand new coaching staff and a brand new regime. I don't know. Nobody will tell us. We're not going to know whose decision it was. But it sounds like, to me, it sounds like way more of an ownership decision, trying to at least get something out of the Deshaun Watson trade, far more than it is a coach showing all of his cards on April 29th.
So we're looking at the same piece of pizza, and we're seeing two very different things. Because I can look at it and say, from a coaching standpoint, I walk in the building, I start looking at the film, and I look at it and I say, man, Shedeur isn't it. I'm not happy with Shedeur. And I start looking at what I've got in Deshaun, and I think, yeah, I think Deshaun's this guy. And then I start talking to both of them, and I realize throughout the course of this that Deshaun feels some kind of way because the last regime drafted not one but two quarterbacks to replace him, to get him out the door. I'm looking around saying, man, that's not what I want. I think you're the guy. So now what I want to do is I want to start to empower Deshaun. I want Deshaun to feel like, hey, you've got the full backing of this coaching regime. Whatever the last regime thought doesn't matter. New people in the streets. I also want to send a message to my locker room that, hey, we're not doing things the way that everybody else did this. This is a new group that's we're going to allow everybody to have their first day with us be their first day with us. That we hear that message all the time of like, I don't care about the past. With this new coaching staff, we only worry about where you are today and where you'll get us in the future. I can totally see where putting this out there now is also Todd Monken's way of making sure that Deshaun Watson hears, hey, this staff's got your back. This staff doesn't care about whatever happened in the past. This staff cares about what we need moving forward. And to me, it also is a statement to the entire organization from the coaching staff of, we think we're ready to compete. If you don't believe you're ready to compete, then you start Shedeur. Because even if it's 50-50, if it's a tie, and you're saying, man, we're not really a playoff team, so let's just see what the young kid can do, right? If it's a tie, if you're not ready to really be a competitive team, maybe you're like Dylan Gabriel. You're like, hey, I just want to see what Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur can do because we're not really going to be there this year. If you're ready to be there this year, then Deshaun Watson's your starter, right? Like, that's the only way you can get to that math. If it's even close, the only way I can get to Deshaun starting is the math. Is the organization feels like they are a Deshaun away from being a playoff team. So now I'm telling Deshaun, I got your back. I'm telling the organization, it's a new start today. I don't care about the past. And I'm telling the entire locker room, we think we're going to make the playoffs this year. So there's no more develop a quarterback. We're in win now mode. I can see where all of those bricks stack together. I may not agree with them, but I can at least see how we get there. This is going to be tricky, and maybe part of the reason that they've made this announcement is because they want to make sure no matter what, they stop these conversations. Because the one thing we know is that Deshaun versus Shedeur is not a debate that's going to go anywhere throughout the preseason. It's not a debate that's going to go anywhere throughout minicamp. It's not a conversation that's going to stop. So we'll break it down as we get more news. In the meantime, we got more news from the NCAA. It's finally official, like putting a ring on it. They finally have decided to make it real. They're expanding the tournament. What do we think?
Does Orlando win it in overtime, or does this instant classic continue? Deep drop and throw, end zone, Thomas Owens. That's an Orlando overtime winner. That is the most decorated receiver in the history of the franchise. Of course, he's the one to end it.
He's like 6'5", 230, like insane athlete, really, really good arm. And I don't know if he'll ever be the fourth best quarterback in the league where he's like Josh Allen, kind of like always in, MVP conversations, but he can be in the Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott tier where he's like kind of always quarterback 7-ish and like can have those years and moments where he's playing like an all-pro. Like that to me is the best outcome.
What put you over the top to like, I want to go to Indiana?
I was really close to going to a couple other schools. However, the point that really cemented me into Indiana is Coach Ignetti really focusing on development. His big selling point was, hey, I don't know, like other schools are trying to sell you on if we're going to win a national championship, if we're going to win all these games. I just know one thing I can do is develop quarterbacks.
It's all about alignment and assignment, whether you're playing junior high football or IFL football. Myler fakes the give, goes the other way with it. He launches himself into the end zone, and he's going to get the touchdown.
That's just a dynamic effort. That is a will to want to get it in the end zone there because he knew that he was running out of space.
Yes.
And so he thought, well, there's only one way you can go here, and that's up and over.
It's official. The NCAA is expected to finalize an expansion of the men's and women's tournaments to 76 teams soon after the completion of this year's March Madness tournament. That was the report that we had at the time, and now it looks like it is actually done. It is happening. The tournament has been expanded to 76. We've been expecting this for a moment. Caroline, how we feel about it now that it's real?
Greedy, greedy, greedy. All of you are greedy, greedy, greedy. Because that's all this is about. I don't like it, Fitz, because I do not believe that this serves any sort of need. I don't believe that this serves a need for the fans. I don't believe that this increases, competition. I don't think that this makes the tournament better. I think all it does is continue to line the pockets of the conferences and the people, the individuals, the organizations, and the networks. It just creates more money because more time slots, more games means more commercials, means more revenue. So don't let anybody gaslight you into thinking that this is better for competition, that we need more deserving teams in the tournament. Don't believe any of that because that's all fake and made up to distract you from the fact that, we see March Madness as a massive cash cow and we just want to cash in more and more. Like, that's fine and all, but let's acknowledge, call it like it is. Let's acknowledge what it is. It is just a moneymaker. The funny thing to me that has made me laugh so hard is that some of these conferences are saying, well, with conference realignment, these conferences are more competitive and deeper, so we should open the fields more to accommodate for conference realignment. That's like saying a pound of bricks is heavier than a pound of feathers. It's the same thing. It's the same number of teams that we have in the NCAA. It's just organized differently and shifted around differently. So, just because UCLA now plays in the Big Ten doesn't mean we have more teams in the NCAA. You chose to do that. You, UCLA and USC and Texas and Oklahoma, you decided to take the payday to go into these different conferences. That's not the NCAA tournament's fault. So I think that's silly and funny. It's like, oh, yeah, since there's more teams in a conference, we need more spots in the tournament. No, there's not more teams in the field. They're just in different conferences. So I hate it. I'm not going to stop watching because I love March Madness. And I don't think that you need to stop watching in order to, to express that you don't like something. But hey, I hate it. And it's for money, but that's the way that college sports is going. Whatever creates more money is going to be the thing that happens.
Well, yes. And I'm okay with parts of that. Like, weirdly, look, expansion sucks. And I don't think that we need more tournament teams because I think it simply rewards more bad basketball, not like good basketball. It also puts in more teams that, frankly, most of you don't give a damn about unless you're in your gambling app that day. Like, most of you don't really care about whether or not, Belmont or Lipscomb makes the NCAA tournament until suddenly you're betting on Belmont or Lipscomb. No offense to two schools you and I both love. So to me, the goal for as a UNLV fan has always been, I want to see the Rebels get back to being really good. I don't want to see the Rebels in the NCAA tournament because now a losing record team finds their way into the NCAA tournament. That doesn't make my heart flutter. I want to see my favorite basketball team go up and become better. And that, unfortunately, is easier said than done. But to the end of money, the two things about this that stand out, I mean, the Big Ten this year earned $69.4 million in revenue from the NCAA basketball tournaments combined. $69.4 million in revenue, okay? That's a lot of money. You give more opportunity, you're going to make more money. Also, earlier in the show, we're talking about Jameson Williams suing the NCAA. The NCAA is paying their way out of a massive NIL settlement with money going to everybody that played post-2016. The NCAA could use more money. On the one hand, I roll my eyes at the concept, Caroline, that why do they need more money? There's this moment. It's like, when is it enough? But on the other hand,
Never.
Life is sometimes like a bank account, right? Like they're spending more. They're absolutely, whether it's the schools, when I say there, whether it's the NCAA, everybody involved is now suddenly bleeding cash all over the place because they are appropriately paying their labor for the first time. So now, all of a sudden, when you are spending money galore, you got to make money. So finding new revenue streams is something that's why we see every single sport looking around and saying, well, what's our streaming option? It's not because the NBA or the NFL sat there and said, you know what we really want? We want games to be on Amazon Prime so Prime viewers can find us. No, they looked around and said, how much will they pay? Great, we'll take it. The NCAA is locked into contracts that doesn't give them the opportunity to just go out and bid their way into streaming services right now, which would help them make more money. So on the one hand, I do roll my eyes at more money. Oh my God, greed. But on the other hand, they're running a business and all of their output is suddenly much higher. So they have to have more input. They have to find a way to make more money just to keep up with what college sports have become.
But like you ask, when is enough enough? When's enough money enough money? Never. It's never enough money. Because you might say, oh, well, they're so rich. Why do they need more? You can always make more. You can always have more. So the greed of so many of these entities, and I'm not even just going to say college sports, I'm going to say greed in sports in general, has eclipsed the fan experience and what fans actually want. Because let's just look at the teams that would have been in this past season if we played in a 76-team field this past year in NCAA tournament. This isn't on the men's side. Oklahoma would have been the 69th team in. Oklahoma was 7-11 in the SEC. Auburn would have been 70. Again, 7-11 in the SEC, just above 500 at 17-16 overall. San Diego State, Indiana, that was 9-11 in the Big Ten. New Mexico, now 23-10, 13-7 in the Mountain West. But if you're 13-7 in the Mountain West, do you really think that team can make a run in the postseason? I'm not going to say never. I'm not going to say no. But Seton Hall, 500 in the Big East. Virginia Tech, 8-10 in a not very good and not very deep ACC. And then Stanford, which was 20-12 overall and 9-9 in the ACC. Do any of those teams, a majority of which were at 500 or significantly below 500 in their respective conferences, do they deserve to have a spot in the postseason? Are you clamoring for, are you salivating at the opportunity to watch a 7-11 Oklahoma team, 7-11 in the SEC, take on a Virginia Tech team that was 8-10 in the ACC? I don't want that. I'm going to watch it because it's postseason basketball, but nobody wants that. You cannot tell me that this product is better, including these teams.
I agree with everything you just said, but I continue to go back to just the bottom line. According to the Arizona Republic, the NCAA tournaments combined, men's and women's, generate over $1 billion annually. So that $1 billion, 40% is kept by the team, by the NCAA. The other 60% goes out to the schools. That's the distribution of it. So that means that they're making, $400 million, over $400 million doing it. Much of that money that the NCAA is making is how they actually fund their other championships. So the 90 other championships that are awarded are funded largely from the money generated from the NCAA tournament. So this, to me, again, like, is it what we want? No. Is it what we need? Probably not. Is it good basketball? No. But in a world where we're watching sports get cut everywhere, and in a world where we're sitting here screaming, well, how are we going to protect non-revenue generating sports? How are we going to protect Olympic sports? How are any of these other things going to stay alive? Well, you have to find money for them. And if you're not finding enough money for them now because you're finally appropriately paying the labor that you've got in men's and women's basketball and in football and all these places. If that's where it's at, then if you're the NCAA, you've got to find a revenue stream. I just don't know how else the NCAA finds more money. It would be one thing if we weren't sitting here every day talking about, oh my God, this is the weirdest time we'll ever see in college sports. Nobody can figure out how to survive. Nobody can figure out long-term how much money. Every day I get gloom and doom from people that say college sports are dying because the economic model doesn't work. If I buy any of that, then don't I need to make more money? And the only way the NCAA can make more money is to add more television inventory. So maybe people don't want it, but if it helps keep everything alive, it's inevitable. I know it is greed, and I know it's anytime we see this, it feels awful. But if it helps keep other sports alive, if it helps keep basketball competitive, if it helps schools continue to have their program because they're getting their portion of their payout, I think it's a necessary evil. It's the devil we need, even if we don't want it.
I think yes, because if that means that cross country and swimming and diving stays afloat, then great. I'm always for that. I'm always for more sports, especially non-revenue sports, because those sports deserve, and those athletes deserve to compete as well. But it's like, okay, well, we have to do something that nobody wants because it started with something that nobody wanted. So it started with all of the greed of college sports. Nobody wanted that. So now in order to diagnose something that nobody wanted, we have to do something that, again, nobody wants. So it's like, I see it. I understand what you're saying wholeheartedly, but it's like, well, we didn't even want this to begin with.
Yeah. Well,
like we didn't want conference realignment to begin with. Like nobody needed Cal and the ACC to begin with. But in order to make up for that, we have to do something again. We have to expand the NCAA tournament, which nobody wants.
And the hardest part about it is we don't want it, but we'll still watch it, which means everybody makes money on it. Speaking of honest, as we break this down honestly, today is National Honesty Day. We're going to have an honest moment about some of the biggest stories in sports and other things coming up next.
Another matchup between the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. How are these teams going to guard each other?
If you're Denver, you're going to have to find a comfort throwing different coverages at Minnesota and Anthony Edwards. It can't just be one thing. The same goes for Nikola Jokic, where honestly, whatever you do, I'm eventually going to get to a point where you do not feel comfortable with how you are guarding me, no matter who's on me.
Handoff, Thomas busting it through for the end zone, touchdown! Tavion Thomas and Tucson back in front with 16 seconds left. 1 second, final play of the game. Jerome Johnson looking to the end zone. Johnson, far corner, jump ball, knocked into the crowd. Game over, Tucson wins.
Playing basketball with your back to the basket and not able to see the floor in the same way was a whole lot different for LeBron. And so that's why it took a little bit for him to feel comfortable in that back to the basket positioning. He's got more post-ups this postseason than Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, and Alperen Şengün combined. This is a huge story, and what a wrinkle that LeBron James has thrown into this series.
When you guys talk about your relationship and your friendship and your respect, there are some people who think like, well, do they want to kill each other? Do they want to fight each other? Do they want to hurt each other? You have to do that when you fight someone.
Yeah. If you have like females sparring in the gym, like it's really hard to not to go heavy. Like women just like, they cut that, you know, emotional thing off and they just like, it's me or you. And Rhonda has that, I have that.
There you go. Today is National Honesty Day. Let her rip something you've wanted to get off your chest. Now, just piece of life advice. Don't do this with your significant other. Do this with your friends. Today's a friend group chat. All right. Today's not the day with your significant other, but go to your friend group chat and figure it out. Caroline Fenton, let's get some things off our chest. We're going to go some sports. We're going to go some non-sports. Whatever you want first, my friend. What would you like to get off your chest on National Honesty Day?
I'm going to start with a non-sports truth because this is something that I've been holding in for a very long time and I need to get it out there. I believe that if you are a picky eater, that you're a bad friend. Feels kind of nice. Feels nice to say that, to get that out there. So let me walk you through my rationale, my thinking there. If you are a picky eater, that means that you're not willing to go outside of your comfort zone, right? You're good with your chicken tenders and fries and cheese quesadillas. You're not willing to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable for the sake of your own experience. I do believe that being a good friend requires you to do some things that you don't want to do, right? You don't want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take your friend to the airport, but you do because you're a good friend, right? You don't want to be on the phone with your friend for 3.5 hours diagnosing the text that her situationship sent her, but you do it anyways because you would do anything for your friends. You don't necessarily want to spend a ton of money to fly across the country to go support your friend in something that they're doing, but you do it because you love them and you support them, and there are just certain things that you do for your friends and your family for the sake of your village. You have to do some things that are uncomfortable sometimes for the people that you love. Well, if you aren't even willing to try an oyster, how can I trust you to watch my kids for me for a couple of hours because I have to go run and do something and put out a work fire? Like, if you are not willing to be a little bit uncomfortable for the sake of your own experiences, how can I count on you to be uncomfortable for the sake of my experience? So if you're not willing to try new foods, then I think you're selfish.
Look, as somebody that grew up with a mom that made it very clear what she made was the only option. There was no going into the fridge. You got what was on the table, and if you didn't eat it, you just didn't eat. I'm the farthest thing from a picky eater, so I'm all in on every single ounce of this. Like, I'm all in on every ounce. And by the way, that's why the weirdest, when people ask, I've been lucky enough to be all over the world in my music career. People say the weirdest thing you've ever eaten. My answers to that are weirder than anybody's. I'm just saying, but I'll always try. I'll try anything once. Raw horse in Japan, Kumamoto, Japan.
Oh,
they slice off
weird.
horse like thin, like carpaccio. Raw horse was weird. Reindeer. Yeah, the number of times I've eaten kangaroo, like that's all weird. But raw horse takes the cake is the weirdest thing. Yeah. I ate Rudolph. I'm not. Now we know what happens when you don't.
He's a
make the
monster.
list. All right. Thank you, go. I will, while we're talking about eating, if we're just going to get things off their chest, I've been on this health journey. I talk too much about it, but I've lost a lot of weight. I've changed my life. I've really cleaned things up. But what's amazing to me as I've gone through this whole journey of getting healthy is that the number of times my friends are like, man, you're at the gym all the time. Take a day off. Like, hey, you know what? You're sore. Like, if I'm like, ooh, I'm sore today. Dude, you've worked hard. Take a day off. You've earned it. Every time we go out to a bar or a restaurant, I'm like, hey, can I just get the grilled chicken and veggies? Because you can order clean anywhere you're ever eating. And my friends roll their eyes and like, dude, you look great. You don't need to worry about it. Get yourself some pasta. My question is, where are those same friends when you're letting yourself go? Like, why is it when you're trying to take care of yourself, everybody's got something to say about why you shouldn't take care of yourself? Yet when I'm sitting there in the stage of my life that, believe me, I've been in before, where I'm eating 2.5 cartons of ice cream a day, nobody ever looks at me and says, wow, you should really stop. Like when I was on the road consuming a case of energy drinks a day and eating a cake a day, nobody was ever like, oh man, that's probably, I went through a whole tour once somewhere where it was my goal to eat one of every single dessert at the buffets on the casino tour. And I did it. And never once did somebody look at me and say, man, that probably ain't good for you. It's funny how when I'm not taking care of myself, nobody seems to want to chime in. When I am, everybody has an opinion. I'm out. Like we need more honest friends when we're fat, and we need more supportive friends when we're not. That's I feel better. Caroline, you're right. I do. I feel better.
Doesn't it? Weight off your shoulders. Yeah. The best kind of friend is somebody who is willing to say the thing that you don't want to hear. Like the best kind of friend is the one that's like, yeah, actually, you don't look good in that dress. Actually, no, you would serve yourself better. You will feel better if you don't order that third martini. Like sometimes you need your friends to just be there for you and support you and say, I don't necessarily need advice right now. I just need an ear to listen. Like you always need those friends that can do that. But it is nice to have a friend that can be brutally honest with you. That is the truest and most authentic form of love. We can all just be honest.
Anytime I see a female friend that comes out and that goes out, and the female friend of mine that is just dressed atrociously, my first thought is never, what is she doing? My first thought is she needs better friends. Somebody should have told her.
She needs better friends.
I mean, that's
your friends should have told you that you missed a spot on the back of your head and you didn't straighten that, and your friends should have told you that, and they're bad friends if they didn't.
Every time. All right, so give me a sports one. What's on your mind on National Honesty Day?
We love our friend Josh Pate. Love having him on the show. I love listening to his show. I think he has a brilliant college football mind. But he did have a take the other day, and he said that he's tired of hearing people say, well, viewership numbers in college football have never been higher. So it's in a good place. It's still in a healthy place. And he disagreed with that notion because he said, well, now, one reason why he disagreed with that was because people don't care about National Signing Day anymore. Well, Josh, who cares? Who cares that people don't care about National Signing Day anymore? Because it doesn't show less of an interest in this sport. It just shows that our attention is redirected to other places. The game has evolved, so our interests have to evolve as well. Because the sport is no longer this 17-year-old sitting in his high school gym wearing a hat is the most important thing that'll happen to me all year long. Because there's a very high likelihood in today's college football that if that 17-year-old puts my school's hat on, he will never play a down for my school. So why am I going to be interested? Our interests are shifting to the transfer portal. Now, far more, we are interested in the 20-year-old who just had 1,000 receiving yards for my rival than it is the 17-year-old sitting in his high school gym. It doesn't mean we care about the sport less. It just means we care about other things. And I do think that viewership numbers can show that the sport is still in a healthy place. Is it everything? No. Is college football perfect? Far from it. It's just different. And I think that that's okay.
Well, and to Pate, I would say if numbers were just absolutely just falling through the floor on college football, would people that don't like the change be turning around and saying, hey, it's not just about the numbers. Like we accept numbers when they shape our narrative and we deny them when they don't. While we're talking about honesty in college sports, I'll stick there for a second because it sort of stacks on everybody talking about what's wrong. Everybody that's complaining about college athletes getting paid, you're just mad that your team sucks. At the end of the day, every single, I can't believe college football. Indiana just won a national championship with a guy at quarterback that a year ago you'd never heard of. And somebody wants to tell me there's a problem with college sports? What is the problem with college sports? To go back to our argument on numbers, the numbers are out there all over the place because the numbers are great all over the place. And this concept of guys getting paid. Guys getting paid. I tell you all the time. I make this correlation all the time. Nobody's ever sat down, ever, in history and thought, what level of Justin Timberlake's education became a problem? Boy, we got to make sure that we've insulated him. Nobody ever looked at any actor and said, I don't know, man. We can't pay him that much. He can't figure out his taxes. And what's he going to do if he makes a bunch of money and then has to go get a regular job? Somebody's going to have to help him with his mental. We don't do this. We just do this with athletes. And the hardest part about it to me is that you're not just doing it to athletes. You're doing it to the athletes that aren't on your favorite team. If your favorite team was still dominant, if your favorite team was still winning championships, you would not give a damn about how much players are making. If it was all Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan winning, none of those fan bases would complain about the modern college football world. You're just complaining because now you're getting beat by other people that are spending the money more effectively and able to equally spend, Caroline. It's false engagement to me the entire way.
I genuinely believe you don't hate NIL, you just hate change. And as somebody who as a kid hated change so much that I threw a temper tantrum when my parents changed from a real Christmas tree to a fake one and has had to do a lot of work on herself to be okay with change and embrace change, I know the feeling. It's scary. We don't like it. Things look different and we love college football and we put it up on this shelf of sanctity. We want it to be the same thing forever. It's changing. But if you sit down on your couch on a Saturday afternoon and turn on Clemson versus Miami, do you feel any different? When you watch the Iron Bowl, does it feel any less impactful or important? Of course not, because those things still matter. The game is just changing.
I'll always take the game as being more important. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks so much for watching Yahoo Sports Daily. Come see us tomorrow.